One Real Talk Christian podcast where we drink coffee and have real conversations on faith, culture, and society. I just realized that was a lie because we're not drinking coffee right now.
No.
But normally we do. But I'm Marc Hyde.
And I'm Chris Fuller.
Not caffeinated. So today we are... Let's just lean into this. Has been an awkward start. That's all right. So, there's this popular phrase out there called "I am Charlie Kirk" that a lot of Christian conservatives are taking on as a personal identity of how Christians should respond to the political scene. So today we are going to be talking about it. So Fuller, you ready to get this thing spicy?
I am Spartacus. Let's go.
I just realized I think we already shot past the
we
normal
were
lecture.
way over.
But I said that was the most let's go I've ever heard. I am Spartacus, let's go. It's like, whoa, you're a robot? hold.
I am Spartacus.
Hold. But either way, dude, we have a doozy of an episode today because we are talking about Christians and politics. Which
very taboo.
I'm trying to remember.
We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about religion.
Let's do both. But hey, you know what? I was thinking the other day, so Real Talk Christian Podcast, we're starting to do three things. Talk about faith, culture, and society.
That's right.
And right now, in our culture right now, faith, culture, and society is intersecting, exploding, and imploding all at the same time.
It is.
A lot of good, a lot of bad, a lot of ugly. And I'm like, you know what? It would be wrong if we did not talk about this.
That's right.
Get a little spicy.
But before we can get into it, we do have a little bit of housekeeping to do. And
do we need a vacuum or something?
Well, just a reminder that if you guys did not know, if you haven't listened in a while or you just tuned in for the first time, this is the second to last episode.
Yep.
Of the year. No.
You're terrible. You're terrible.
Anyways, we're not drinking coffee, so we do have some housekeeping things, and that housekeeping thing is reading a review.
Ooh.
So this is from MT Christian. Fun with good tidbits. Marc and Fuller have been fun while discussing interesting topics. I don't always agree with them, but you never know, but you never will always agree with subjects or someone on all subjects. I like how in the end they always say to research the Bible yourself, which is the meat of the subject because the Bible is the one truth.
Let's go.
On a side note, it also inspired me to start roasting my own coffee.
Yo!
Let's go, MT Christian.
I feel like whoever MT Christian is, bro, you gotta talk about this in the Facebook group.
Is that like MT, like Mountain Time Christian?
No, like...
I bring some good old mountain music like Grandma and Grandpa used to play.
I don't know if I know that song.
What?
I know,
that's like
I know
good
Rocky
stuff.
Top, like Rocky Top, you'll always be. That's you.
See, I was thinking like Rocky Top, Tennessee.
Well, that is the good old Rocky Top. Woo! Rocky Top, Tennessee. Rocky Top, Tennessee. But that's UT. That's the Vols. Go Vols. And then there's, what's the other one that I'm blanking on, the big country one? It's not West Virginia, Mountain Mama, Country Road, Take Me Home. Yeah. That's the one I was thinking of.
It's not country, though.
Wait, what?
It's not country. That's bluegrass, bro.
Oh, my bad, dog. My bad.
Take me home, country road, to the place of Charlie Kirk. Oh, sorry.
Wait a minute. No, but either way, so MT Christian, let us know in the Facebook group, what is you be roasting? And show us some pictures of the setup, my guy. Like you do it on a cast iron skillet, like Father did back in the day? Because you used to stand over that skillet and just churn like a butter.
Yeah.
And then you got your own little roaster, which is the roaster even out right now? Or is it like in storage?
It's
in the garage?
It's in the garage.
Oh, that's just chilling, doing his thing.
Yeah.
But needless to say, so MT Christian, right? MT Christian. Yeah, MT Christian. Hit us up. We'll get a mini swag bag in the mail for you. But before we jump into today's conversation, I do want to say we have talked about different political conversations on the podcast before.
A few times.
So I looked up the word politics on the website because that's the fastest way to see if we've covered one of these episodes. Episode 64 was Can Christians Be Political? That's the first time we ever talked about politics, which I thought was interesting. Then we actually had two that were almost like, well, that's not real. Well, I guess kind of. But in episode 265, we talked about what is Christian nationalism and should we be concerned? Because that was a big question that we had back early 2025. And since Charlie Kirk's death, that question has been even bigger, which we're going to talk about. And then 2 episodes later, we talked about cultural versus biblical Christianity. What's the difference about being like there's what does it mean to be a Christian just because that's what you are grown up in and that's kind of your culture and your environment. So it's like you're Christian just because that's where you find yourself, not actually following the ways of Jesus. So
there was another one, though.
I thought there was, but what was the other one?
When we talked about COVID.
Oh,
it was very political.
We talked about, that's right.
The COVID.
Oh, that was a bonus episode on March 17th. The coronavirus and the Christian response. Look at that.
Yes, sir.
So we have to talk about politics some on the show.
Somewhat.
But this one, I feel like we are in a world where it's very, very, very different. And so, since Charlie Kirk's death, there's almost seems to be like the line between the third way, which is a popular quote and idea that Tim Keller backed, Rick Warren backed, and other people as well, where basically you don't pick a political side, you stick with Scripture and critique all parties, right? And so it's the fact of you're not a Republican, you're not a Democrat, you got to vote. Some people might argue that you don't. I argue you do. So you still have to vote based on issues or whatnot, but you're not trying to be so gun ho. I am a Christian conservative. I'm a Christian liberal. I'm a Christian this. It's the fact that I'm just a Christian, and I will keep both sides accountable. But it seems like ever since Charlie Kirk's death, that line has been absolutely obliterated, right? So it seems like every belief now is now a political belief. And Christians can no longer say, I just don't do politics, because faith and culture are in such a war where if you're going to stand up for your beliefs or simply just speak out for what you believe, you are now lumped into a camp and you can no longer get out no matter how hard you try. And, I've heard a lot of people and some people say that if they don't care if they sound partisan anymore, it's time to be clear and where the Bible is clear. I've also heard people say that the conservative movement goes completely against Christ's love for others and rejection of power and control. And I've heard others people say, just Christian anarchy, screw politics, like Jesus is king. We've got to wait for him to come back. And we want Christianity to literally infiltrate everything. And I'm trying to think I think Refuge Ministries is the name of it, where basically the idea is the fact of we don't want just Christian nationalism. We want Christian, world empire type idea where literally Christian values are the laws of the land.
They're probably more along the lines of full preterists then.
Absolutely,
full preterist, post-mill.
Yeah. Or Amill. To be honest with you, more Amill than just post-mill.
Oh,
because post-mill, you're trying to get the world to be so Christian that Christ comes back. Yeah.
Right.
But
Amill's more like it's a spirit, like the millennium is a spiritual millennium rather than post-mill is like, the world's got to be saved and then Christ will come back. So we got to get the world saved.
Yep. And so you have some people who are like, I don't care if it's on partisan anymore. You have other people who are saying that you can no longer be a Democrat because those are all people are evil. You can't be conservative because you don't care about the poor and the way Jesus did. I've heard other people say it's time to stand up and fight for our beliefs, not just say what we believe, but actually fight for our beliefs and fight for a Christian nation. I've heard other Christians say that we should want the whole world, like I said, to be Christian and become Christian nationalists. Really is not a bad thing because it's better for everybody involved. I've heard people talk about ghetto and black fatigue, white flight, rich versus poor, liberal, progressive Christianity versus traditional Christianity.
Politics is about to explode everything here in the Western culture.
Yes, and I was going to say pretty much anything you see on YouTube is pitting both political sides against each other, and Christians are having to actually basically, it seems like pick political sides, and not just pick political sides, but based on what you say, you kind of are making a stance in some way, shape, or form. Jubilee Studios has done a lot of capitalists, one capitalist versus 20, I don't want to say Marxist or communist, but things like that. You've had one a conservative Christian versus 20 liberal Christians, one, which Mayor Pete was on, one liberal versus 20 conservatives. We have all these pittings against each other inside of this. You see Steve Louder with Crowder, he's starting to go back and having his prove me wrong things.
Right.
We had Charlie Kirk with Turning Point USA going to college campuses, and literally people coming up the mic, and it wasn't so much of a debate as much as come speak your piece and try to hold your own with this conversation. And so, since Charlie Kirk's deaths, though, Christianity, even more than I would say before, has very much hitched their trailer
hitch their wagon
on the Republican conservative platform, and more Christian conservatives are now pretty much saying, I am Charlie Kirk. He stood for what we believe in. I've seen churches put up big posters of him, on the sides of their building, rest in peace Charlie Kirk. We saw his memorial service, which was a beautiful, beautiful service for a lot of things in terms of Erica Kirk saying, I forgive the person that killed Charlie. We had worship service for like an hour long with like the Avengers of Christian artists. Like they literally called the biggest, baddest Christian music names artists out there, like Chris Tomlin and Brandon Lake.
And now for the
Phil
Super Bowl
Wickham.
halftime, we're getting ready to do the whole, like, what was it, the American halftime show?
Yeah, America's halftime show with Turning Point USA, which I know Christians have always done something like that. Y'all just didn't know about it. But
right.
youth groups, we always knew. We always did something different. But you have people like that where it looks really, really good, but then you have, Trump walking up there at the platform during the ceremony and says, Erica, you really do love your enemy the way Jesus does. I hate him. And like people are laughing. You have other people who are giving speeches where you're like, this doesn't seem very Christian. This seems very political.
RNC.
What?
RNC convention type.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. Right. And now all of a sudden you have things where it's like conservatives are going after Christians. They'd be like, stand up for your beliefs. Let's fight for our nation. Let's fight for our morals. And anytime a Christian stands up and all of a sudden starts to speak into what the Bible is clear about, all of a sudden it's no longer just things of the church where there is no separation of church and state. There is no separation between the sacred and the secular. It really is. It feels like we're in a cultural battleground right now, and not just a cultural differences or let's just all coexist. Let's all be tolerant towards everybody. But conservatives are being assaulted on the streets by liberals. We have liberals who are actively going against conservatives who are actively going against liberals. And all of a sudden we're just sitting here like looking at this different thing, and it's just nuts. And so, in the midst of all, I'm going to read, this little thing right here just to make sure I get to where we're trying to go. But so in the midst of all these different things that we're dealing with in our culture, so many conservative Christians are rising up to honor Charlie, which I will just point blank say it. I watched a lot of Charlie Kirk before he passed away.
Sure.
Like I know a lot of people watched him after he passed.
Yeah.
I watched a lot of him during. I've been following him for years.
I did, me too, and him and Ben Shapiro. I used to follow Crowder back in the day too. So I followed him for a long time.
I like Brett Cooper personally. She's fantastic. But either way, so we have
Candace Owens and all of them.
I mean, that girl is on a mission right now. Yep. She seems almost. I'm not saying she is crazy or going on the crazy train, but. Sometimes I'm always wondering like how much of the tin hat you're wearing right now, but either way, but in the midst of all these different things that we are dealing with culturally, so many conservative Christians are rising up to honor Charlie, putting up massive banners outside their church, which there's one in Niles. If you go up to Granger, I'm sorry, Influence Church.
Okay.
They have a huge banner that's the
right
size of their building.
Yeah.
That literally says Charlie Kirk and his date, like it's a memorial on their church building. So they're hitching their wagon to a conservative political activists, which we can talk about that. There have been having more and more public square debates. People are starting to use this phrase, and there's shirts all over the place that says, I am Charlie Kirk, to connect his morals, his faith, his beliefs, and his practice, and to say, we are with you. But we also see many folks on the other side celebrating his death, and if not celebrating his death, they're at least not grieving him. And some are in the same way that the Jews did not grieve the German defeat and Hitler's death. We actually see people who are saying that, well, you don't see, we saw Christians celebrating Hitler's death, so us on this side, we going to celebrate Charlie Kirk's death. Don't soundbite me for that one. Don't clip that. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's what people have been saying, even at the No Kings protest.
Sure.
And so as Christians, I think it'd be good just for us to talk about this dividing line of faith in the political square, and honestly, dude, just have an open conversation.
Sure.
Where are we at? Where our thoughts are? What we should do about it? I got no notes. I got no stats. I got no figures. I just got real talk, bro. And like that's my entire intro to this whole thing of what we're dealing with.
I think the biggest problem right now in the United States, and maybe even throughout the rest of the world, for those that are listening in other parts of the world, but here in America, we have a really big problem. We have a identity crisis, I would almost say, of whether you are an American Christian or a Christian American. And what I mean by that,
what do you mean by that?
Is do you let your patriotism dictate your faith, or your faith dictate your patriotism? And also what I mean by that,
go into that.
Is, am I kingdom seeking first, American second, or I'm an American first and then I seek the kingdom? So do my political views actually influence my religious views, or do my religious views influence my political views? And so what I'm seeing a lot of is, and I'll give you an example of both.
I'll say I want an example, because that one's kind of hard. Like it's a witty phrase, but what does that actually look like for
I'm
somebody?
witty. What can I say?
Yes, sir, you is.
So for an American Christian, right? Those are the people that are like, well, I hope those liberals get what's coming to them, and oh well, if somebody took out President Joe Biden, please don't do that. But if I wouldn't lose a day of sleep about it, and where the Bible tells us to love our enemies, to pray for our leaders, it's very contradictory to what the
Scripture
says.
And this was at the time when Christians were being actively killed.
Sure. Exactly. And so, but then the Christian Americans are the ones that are praying for their leaders, right? Though they may not agree with them politically, right? And we always stand for truth. Rather than being upset and going against what Scripture says, we dive into Scripture and we try to stand for truth and stand for the right thing and say, no, this is the way God would want it. But we also realize that people that are lost are never going to follow God's ways anyways until they know the Creator. And so rather than being so focused about trying to convince the other side that they're politically wrong or they're immoral, you could try to prove that they're immoral, but not to win a political debate, more or less to win a salvific debate.
But that sounds good in theory,
Sure.
But can we actually do that in today's culture? Like when we're looking at folks, right? And so as Christians, if we say, the Bible doesn't, this is why it's so hard. This is what makes Christianity so confusing, right? Is when Christianity was on the outside of the empire ruled and Christians lived their lives the best that they could. But then as more and more people became Christian and more of the world became, I would just say Christianized for what it is, and more people becoming Christian then started obviously representing their people because their people became more, I think of Rudy Yakum, right? And so he's our representative here in our area, right? He is I go to church with Homeboy. Like the dude's a great dude, great father. His wife is fantastic. Kids are fantastic too. And so he represents our area because our area is a lot more of a conservative, blue collar Christian area. So therefore we are going to elect somebody like that. And then as they get into power, you spread that across the board. How do you then balance where's the fact of, no, the Bible's way for dictating laws is better versus not. And that's where it gets really hairy, because if we say all of a sudden, well, if God goes against LGBTQ all across the board with gay marriage, gay adoptions, DEI, all these different things, if that's what the Bible goes against, or if it does, people have that conversation too, how are we dictating morals through the law?
Well, Christians have always been told to stand for truth, right? We think about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? The Nebuchadnezzar saying, "Hey, bow down and worship this golden statue that I've made." And they had a real dilemma of that time, right? They had to either follow the laws or stand up for truth and said, "No, we're not going to do that. There's only one God we serve." And so they chose to serve God.
And they took the heat.
And they were.
Oh, come on, that was a good joke.
It was good.
They took the heat. For that
well, they
one.
didn't really, because they didn't burn. Not even smoke on their cloaks. But
That's true. My bad.
But they were advisors to King Nebuchadnezzar at the time. So it wasn't like they were
Daniel.
it wasn't just like they were nobodies, right? They were somebody. They were what we would consider a politician in the political sphere at this point. And yet they still stood up for truth. Did they berate the other people that didn't stand up for truth? No, they led by example.
Yep.
And so that's where I say that the political Christians, right, the Christians in that political sphere, the politicians that are in that, should lead by example. Yes, stand up for what is morally good, but not berate those like, okay, my counterpart across the aisle, they don't believe this and they're just a dodo head or whatever they're going to say. That is not a
like
good,
let facts be facts.
Yes. No, this is what it is. This is how I believe, because this is what God says, and this is what, my faith dictates. And so this is why I'm voting this way, yay or nay on this, or
Right,
this is why I'm introducing this bill.
But then people will say, why are you putting your God's rules on me?
Well,
You know what I mean? Like that's the argument.
And I would say, are you an atheist? and they would, or do you believe in another religion? Don't you do the same thing? Like Omar, whatever her last name is, she's, I believe, Muslim.
Oh, from Michigan, right?
Yeah.
Michigan or Minnesota?
Whatever.
Gosh, I don't remember.
But I'm sure that her religion is influencing the way she votes and the policies she puts forward, just as much as the person who doesn't believe
for mayor of New York right now. I can't remember his name.
Mom,
Homeboy said that his wife was the real victim of 9/11 because of the towers blew up. Everyone became very like, what's going on? And so they like all Muslims, even the peaceful conservative ones, were being looked at terribly and treated terribly. And she's like, I'm like, you don't call your wife the real victim of 9/11, but that's just besides.
No, but honestly, they probably were looked at that way and probably were treated terribly.
And I'm not saying that is good, but like even like when World War II happened, Pearl Harbor got bombed.
Right.
Like Japan was the war against us. Everyone was like, "Whoa, are these like secret sleeper cells now?" All of a sudden,
that's
like,
what anybody that was American but was Japanese descended or Chinese descended, they looked at in that way and they treated differently.
And so how can we as Christians then, if we're having laws to try to protect our people and do what we got to do, versus, here's what the Christian's supposed to do, and Christians shouldn't be in power, and Jesus, rejected power, people say. It's like, how do we balance that?
We see people in power throughout Scripture. We see King David. We see King Solomon. We see all these different kings that were into power over a nation. We see people even when they were carried off into Gentile nations like Daniel, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, having influence in those pagan nations. I don't think the people of God necessarily have to stay out of any position of quote-unquote power.
And the Bible, I don't think the Bible has ever said it's not okay to not be in those positions either.
Right, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. That I don't think that I think that we see very much so that God's people have been in those types of positions at different times, and that God, as long as they seek God and not themselves, again following the first commandment, then there is a different mindset with it.
Right.
If they're into the politics because of what they're getting out of it, whether it's they want the pride to build up, or maybe it's to do something nefarious like line the pockets, under the table money type of stuff, then it gets into a seriously bad thing. Again, you're not following God, and you're putting yourself or whatever. And the same with mistreating those who may not know God. We cannot expect sinners to know God and his laws and have the same morals as God, even though we all have that moral code that God has put within us. We were all once sinners, right? And God loved us in our sin and saved us from our sin. And we have to have that same compassion towards the people across the aisle that maybe view our morals as different and wrong. And you call them liberals. Listen, I know a Christian Democrat liberal. I do. And he is the most loving guy, and he tries to present God's love to people, and he takes care of people, and he does everything a Christian should, but he views things a little politically different than I would say a Republican or a Christian conservative would. Whoops, there goes
your water.
So I mean, I think it is possible to be on the other side of the aisle and still be a Christian and act in a godly manner, and maybe just see things from a politically different standpoint. Because in this gentleman's view, Republicans, conservatives don't focus on the poor and the needy, whereas he believes that the Democratic Party does, because they're always trying to get money for those that are downtrodden, the lower class people.
But then, and this is where it gets hard now, because then it's like, okay, but then you're literally enslaving people to government handouts, rather than telling them, no, the best way to get out of poverty, this is why Christians say, I am Charlie Kirk, because it's like, why is for lack of a better word, how come the black community has so many issues? Because of the fatherlessness, because of they're trying to be, Black Lives Matter is all about destroying the family unit. Karl Marx was all about destroying the family unit.
But look at the people that are within that culture that follow Christ, and what are they doing? Are they fighting? That they're fighting for the fathers. They're fighting for a change in the culture, not necessarily anything else. And that's great, I think we should. But I think, again, you're right. I don't agree that government should be handing out, because I believe the church should be taking care of those poor and downtrodden.
Right.
That's what I believe. And so that's why I hold that view. we should be doing the best we can to help those in need and be the hands and feet of Jesus, like we talked about in our Thanksgiving episode.
And, this is where it gets hard for me, because it's like, I remember last time we had this episode, I was really struggling with feeling like I was a believer, I was almost like the Jews in Babylon, right? Like exiles in Babylon, where it's like, I feel politically homeless. I don't know where I'm supposed to fall. I don't, but I will say, like, the death of Charlie Kirk hurt. I grieved all the other deaths, and I'm like, man, that sucks. Like, this is not the way it's supposed to be. But Charlie's death hurt. And I think it's because, for me, and I made a whole post in the Facebook group where he was one of the few, I would say, guys who were Christians, who were believers, who were willing to do the hard work of having conversations, what we do here in RTC. But he would do it out in the streets. We do it in a basement. But he was someone who was unapologetic about his faith. He was unapologetic about his patriotism. He was unapologetic about loving America. And he believed that the best way to make and this is where people, I will say, I've watched hours of him before he died and after he died. I've watched both sides. I literally have watched someone who has a huge platform, and they are a trans woman. Is that the right? I always get the terminology wrong. Was a man, became a woman, very liberal, grew up Christian, hates the conservative movement. And that's why I watched.
Say how wrong it was.
I watched the videos. Yeah, right. I've watched. I put hours into preparing, not even preparing this, but just my own thoughts of these things. And the more I see the things happening, the more I'm like, yeah, it just seems obvious of, if you're a Christian, what party you're going to tend to line up more with. Now, I'm not saying I'm a MAGA Republican, but there is the level of, I can't vote for a party where it's like, you think it's okay to have dudes change in front of my daughters in a bathroom? That's not okay. It's not okay to let, kids who you say are not old enough for tattoos, not old enough to drink, not old enough to buy fireworks or spray paint, but it's okay to whack off their body parts. I can't vote for that. That's not okay. That's not acceptable. I can't vote for people who are killing babies in the womb. I can't vote for people who literally are trying to control people with handouts. I can't vote for that. I can't vote for basically the quote unquote party of tolerance who is intolerant. Like, I can't vote for these things.
So can you vote for the people that mistreat people?
What do you mean?
Well, there sure is a lot of name-calling slander that comes from the right now, right?
Oh, and I can't stand that either, where the dirty, rotten, filthy, stupid liberals, like that, I don't like that either.
And trying to make sure that, we're going to make them lose their job. We're going to do this. They're praising that Charlie Kirk died, and because of that, we're going to make sure that they get fired. And so this is where I find myself in the conundrum, right?
Right.
Because I see both.
That's where I feel.
I see both sides are being wrong.
But like, there's stuff like with ICE, like this, like with the deportation type stuff. Sure. Like I do believe, which is really funny when you look at the record of how much I'm going to sound real partisan right now. When Democrats are in the presidential seat, they're totally cool with ICE, ain't got no issues. But when the second Republican steps in, they think they paint Republicans as, you guys hate people, you're trying to ship people out, you're trying to destroy America, this, that, and the other. Now Trump is set for potentially beating Obama for motor deportation, but ain't nobody talking about when the left side does it. But, I do think that there are ways where could we help get people into American citizenship in some way, shape, or form? But I feel like, yes, we should protect the border a little bit better because of the drug and the sex trafficking situations that we are dealing with. Sure. We should deal with those things. As a Christian, do I want to see people deported after they built livelihoods here? No, I don't. And if we just say, well, the laws of the land say this, well, because like the laws of the land and people compare it to Germany, where it's like, well, the laws of the land said you turn in your Jewish neighbor, so you going to do that too?
Right.
But this is different than, this is sending them back to their country, not putting them in concentration camps and gassing them.
Follow the laws of the land until it violates the laws of God.
Right.
And then follow the laws of God.
But so what people say, though, is the fact of, as Christians, if we try to make the laws of the land the laws of God, how can you do that while still having a clear conscience with things like deportations and taking care of the sick and the Medicaid situation, Social Security, all these different things? A lot of times I feel like the issue that we're having now with this whole I am Charlie Kirk thing that I resonate with is the fact of, as America, we believe in free speech, and the conservative party, not just party, but Christians, I should say, Christian conservatives, I firmly believe that you in America are allowed to speak on your LGBTQ issues. You are allowed to march. You are allowed to protest
peacefully.
The funny thing is, though, is the fact of this whole no king protest. I'm like, if there really was a king, like look at throughout history, they'd behead you right now. Like you don't get to protest the king if there really is one.
Yeah,
like,
but you know, Trump was trolling too. So
he was. That's the thing is like the dude's a jerk.
He stirs up strife.
He's a punk.
He stirs
loves
up,
it.
Yeah, he stirs up. He thrives in strife.
He thrives on it because he knows. But he also knows as a business owner, the more controversy you make, the more you have to exploit it.
But the big thing for me is like with all these people that have been losing their jobs and stuff over celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. I think that's wrong for the law of our freedom of speech. Right? If you want to celebrate that, I disagree with you strongly. I think we should never celebrate anybody's death. I don't care who you are. I think that shows your morality. But in this country, you do have that right. So why would we fire? Like,
but businesses also have the right to fire you.
They do. They absolutely
prerogative.
do. They absolutely.
We talk about the headhunters, where it's like.
But I'm talking about the people that are getting fired from the federal level. They are not a business. They're run by the government, which is run by the people. So they are taxpayers.
Right.
They should be able to speak freely. To an extent, you can't yell out fire in a crowded theater, right? So there's an extent you can't calling for violence. I get that, right? But a celebration, roast me on here, that's fine. I still believe that you should have that right, though I don't agree with that as an American. But as a Christian, I am very deeply saddened for those people. And I did not grieve Charlie Kirk's death like everybody else did, because the moment Charlie Kirk died, I knew he was with the Father.
Right.
He did not suffer. I felt for his wife and kids. That's who I grieved for, because they have to go on without a husband. Without those kids will never be able to grow up with their father. That is heartbreaking to me as a father.
And I think why I grieved it was he is doing in a public sphere what I used to do. Like this whole podcast started because I would have those conversations with my teenagers in youth group.
Sure.
Like we would have real talk. We'd have uncensored series. Let's talk about the hard issues and let's talk about these different things. And again, you can go into, I think there's people who have fair arguments on both sides. Like, is the right to bear arms a Christian right, or is that just an American right? Like, there's that big question. You keep looking over there. Something happened?
That's because one of my children is out of bed right now. And it's hanging out by the door.
Is that Shiloh?
I don't know who it is, but I was wondering what that noise was on my vent. Right there for the door vent, and I was like, "Oh, look, there's a little hand right there just sitting out."
I saw Bluey moving, and then they disappeared real quick.
Once they heard that I seen him over there,
we might need to text Mama to see what's going on.
I probably should.
Oh snap! But what hurt me about his death is he is doing in a public sphere what I did with my teenagers, and what we're doing right now, and the fact that someone died because they thought he was too, and I will say there are some things that are not adding up. Like there's some things with Israel that are not adding up, because as a conservative, everyone says, "Oh, you have to say." I saw Janelle, I can see your be appropriate, Janelle. I can see your text on Fellow's iPad. But because like there are things that people say, "Oh, we have to side with Israel because it's God's chosen people." I don't necessarily believe I'm on a different side of that equation. I'm just going to say it. And so, but like, there's a lot of smoking guns that are in weird places that I know Candace Owens trying to sniff some stuff out. I mean, she's also, might be on crazy train in some regards, but the same with other regards, I don't know. But like, there's some things that aren't quite working out. But I'm like, there was a man who was absolutely brilliant at his craft. He was a brilliant conversationalist. When you saw him on the whatever podcast, I have never seen a person who he stepped out of his debater role and flipped into a compassion for people role. And then when he was at these Turning Point USA events, he would get bold and brash when it was time to get bold and brash. Like he, when someone stepped up to the plate, he stepped up to the plate, but he also he showed compassion to whom he showed compassion, and mercy to those who showed mercy. Like that's the type of person that he was. And so I grieved because I'm like, we lost somebody who was a strong believer. He was a strong conservative. He was a very strong thing. And he threw his hat into the Trump camp. And if you were to ask him, was it because he loved Trump, or was it because it was the fact of, and if we don't do this, we get all this evil instead? I think that was more his mindset. And, as Christians, we are in a unique spot where...
But as Christians, are we going to stop evil?
Well, and that's the thing is the fact of as Christians, can we? And so, but as an American law, can we prevent evil by actually putting into law godly principles? And I would say, like, you read Tom Holland's book, Dominion, fascinating read. That was a fantastic book. Not Tom Holland Spider-Man, Tom Holland, the historian.
Yeah.
There's another episode of Unbelievable, Vic Vitale, the week, just so you know, October 24th, it just dropped today or yesterday, something like that, where there's a guy who was very, very much like, we need to get Christianity out of the center of the social structures and the confines, get it out of the center square. He was there's a term for it, but basically like an atheist who's, you can be Christian, fine, whatever, but we're better off as a society without it, wrote a book as basically an apology and saying, no, without Christianity, there's no moral backbone by which society can stand. And democracy can only exist with a moral backbone and a moral spine. And you see, the premise of Karl Marx is get God out of politics and destroy capitalism. That's how Marxism wins. And so it seems like now all of a sudden it's not a fight between conservative and liberal, but a anti-God mindset versus a pro-God mindset, because it's almost like Marxism is putting capitalism and the freedoms that we have been given into the God-Christian world rather than this is the only way we can do it. And so I feel like it's becoming less and less of we can go a third way and more of it's time to plant a flag. Now, not saying it's time to fight, but it's time to at least stand your ground. But is there a way to stand your ground and say what you believe without either A, looking like you're on the offense, or B, it's just going to be what it's going to be? Because the best defense is the best offense. If you're really good at defense, it looks like offense.
The best part about what Charlie Kirk did was that he didn't ground himself into, yes, he fell into a political party, but
unapologetically
he was...
Well, I will say he was terrible for one thing. He was an Oregon Duck fan.
But he always, at every single one of his rallies, gave the gospel message.
Yeah.
I would say he was a Christian first. And if the RNC said, you know what, screw anybody that believes in God, Charlie would have been like, I'm out of the RNC, and you need Jesus, and let me tell you why. And I think that is where Christians, whether they're here in America or across the world, have to have that, right? You don't plant your flag in a political or some sort of monarchy field, right? I think what you do is you plant your flag in Christ, and then out of that you stand for his truth, right? So Jesus said, my kingdom's not of this world, and if it was for my world, my disciples would fight for it. So his kingdom is not here. What we are is we are ambassadors, is what Paul calls us. And we've been talking about this a lot at church and small group and all sorts of stuff as it's been very prevalent since Charlie Kirk. But it's not about Christianizing the world as much as saving the world. The world is going to be destroyed. It's about trying to make sure that those beggars that are trying to find bread, and that we bring Christ to the lost and tell them of the kingdom of God that is a better kingdom than this world, that this kingdom in this world is going to eventually be destroyed one day. But there's an everlasting kingdom that is beautiful and righteous, and that there is no wrong in. And that's the kingdom we want them to come to. We, as an ambassador, we're always telling people about the other country, right? Let me tell you about the country of Christ. Rather than, yes, this country, we have very many good things in this country, right? And we have the ability to debate and talk politics and what should we do with this, what should we do with that. But if we're more concerned about with the politics here in America rather than presenting the gospel to those who are lost, we've got our priorities wrong.
Right, and this is... I like what you're saying. Like, the political party is not the compass by which we live our life. And the way the example that pops into my head, right, is, well, let's bring this to the church, right? We have like super fundy, and then we have your more from the world I grew up in. This was the example
sure.
that was given. You got your fundy churches, you got your conservative evangelical churches, which is where you and I would fall in. And a lot of times the fundy church would be in line with truth, but they would almost swing in the opposite direction because, truth is, we think it's a little wiggly waggly line, but it's a straight line. This is truth. And sometimes the conservative evangelical church might look liberal in some things. And so the fundies would say, since they're over there, we're going to come here to the middle where the truth is. But there would be times when the evangelical church would be in the middle and say, no, like this is what the Bible says. And fundies would be like, if they're doing it, that must mean it's wrong. So we're going to come over here.
No, and so I'm not saying that.
No, I'm not saying that's what you're saying. That's I'm actually agreeing with you. So it's almost like I'm trying to get it into my world where the fundies would base what they believe were right or wrong based on this other people rather than just say, no, if we follow truth, like we're going to agree on things and we're going to disagree on things. And that's what I mean by planting our flag. Like I'm not going to sit here and say you plant your flag in the Republican Party and whatever the Republican Party says goes.
Sure.
You plant your flag on truth.
Right.
And then sometimes, and right now I feel like a lot of the things, the Republican, and this is what I mean by the partisan line seems to be split. There doesn't seem to be a third way. Because if you plant your flag and you are clear where the Bible is clear, you're going to sound like a conservative and you're going to have to just be okay with that.
Somewhat.
Well, I'm talking about like the fact that there's only two genders, that that there's no like the LGBTQ conversation. Like we don't believe in gay marriage. That the Bible even states that there's no. So that you're going to look like a flaming conservative.
But a non-Christian conservative stands on those principles without love and lacks love.
Okay, so the conversation is less about. And there's a quote there about the fact of godless conservatism versus godly conservatism.
Right.
Oh, there's a quote. I'm going to find that quote real quick.
And this is why I say you have to have the right mindset rather than being an American Christian. You have to be a Christian American, and everything that you stand for, you have to do it in the way that Christians should, and that's in gentleness and love. When we correct people, it should be in gentleness and love. That's the way we are told to present things to people. And that's the way we're supposed to be. And love doesn't mean acceptance. I'm not saying, because people get that messed up too, go, well, I have to love them, so I just have to be okay with what they're doing. No, you don't. You can still stand up for truth, and you still have to infiltrate the world. We're not called to be outside of the world. We're not, well, we are, but we're not called to be, like in the Amish like sect and remove ourselves from the world. We're called to be in the world, but not of the world. We're called to be influencers in the world and not be influenced by the world. We're called to, like Christ, love the world and not require that the world loves us, because they won't. They will hate us just like they hated him. But in all things, we do all things in gentleness and love and hold to truth and the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we present that gospel to those of the lost, begging and pleading with them, kicking and screaming, all the way into heaven if we have to. And I read a quote, and I'm trying to remember who it was by. It might have been by Gary DeMar. Gary DeMar might have said this.
Who's Gary DeMar? I don't know who
Gary DeMar is. He's a profound creationist, but he is also basically the modern day Charles Spurgeon of partial preterism. But he said, when we read in the Bible that the gates of hell shall not prevail against the saints, right? We read this. And he said people have mistaken that and taken that as the gates of hell will not prevail against actually, it might be Wesley Huff that said this, but that will not prevail against us is not that we're being attacked by the gates of hell, because gates of any kingdom have never done anything. The gates of hell will not prevail against us means we're on the offense against hell. And we're breaking them gates down. And I love that quote. And I now that I think about it, I think it was Wesley Huff that said
That's a whole different way of thinking about it.
It is, because that means we are supposed to be on the offensive, but not on the offensive attacking politically or on morality, but on the offensive of presenting the gospel of Jesus.
And, this is kind of where the Lord of the Rings from our Halloween episode.
Yeah.
When they're at the gates of Mordor, right? Like they were on
this is why you got canceled at Southside, because you're bringing illustrations for Lord of the Rings.
I didn't get canceled, but they wanted me to be canceled. Can't cancel this.
Anyways.
Gosh, that was terrible, Mark.
Sorry.
That was terrible, Mark. But like the gates of Mordor open up and you see Aragorn turn and look at everybody, and then grabs a sword and just Leroy Jenkins that mug
for Frodo,
like Leroy Jenkins that thing, and goes after it.
He may fall someday, but that day is not today.
But so here's the question: then we see that on the spiritual offense, but a lot of conservatives will say, yeah, that's what we doing. We fighting against evil, and the evil that we are fighting is in the political sphere right now because that's the world we find ourselves.
See,
in. So how do you balance?
They're
that?
so focused on fighting the immorality. They're not fighting for the right thing. They lost their focus on what they should be fighting for because morality comes when salvation comes. Those who are saved are sanctified. And when you're sanctified, your morality changes because you're more in line with God. So rather than attacking the problem, which is they're unsaved, they don't know Christ, they're attacking the symptom.
Right.
And they'll never win.
And I will say, and this is the beautiful thing about Charlie Kirk, is he went beyond just the symptom and went to the source.
Right.
But how do we handle that then with American politics? Because as Americans, we vote for laws, we vote for people, we pass laws, we create these different things.
And I'm not going to tell you which way to vote or how to vote. All I'm going to say is stay in line with the scripture of God and vote your convictions.
Well, more so, is it okay for Christians to pass different laws for certain things? Like, for example, is it okay for Christians to back what ICE is doing right now? Or is it okay for Christians to try to get to ban books from the library? Or is it okay for Christians to try to pass laws about Title IX sports for women and girls sports? Like, is it okay to fight for those laws because we are trying to protect our children? We're trying to, not just give a moral compass to society, but that's how the American culture works. Yeah. You know what I mean?
So,
like, this is where we find ourselves.
So, yeah.
So we can't ignore it.
Yeah. I think, again, you should read your scripture and vote your conviction on these things. But I would also say don't stop there, right? Because you're and those things, everything you just named is only attacking the symptom. Mm-hmm. It is not attacking the problem. And the problem is sin. The problem is people have lost fellowship by their sin with the Creator, and they've lost their purpose. They were made in the image of God, which means God had a specific mindset. So Brandon Soche was talking about the Greek word for sin, and I don't remember what the actual Greek word is off the top of my head, but what it means basically is miss the mark. We were just talking about this at small group this last week. And he said when you miss the mark, you miss the way that God intended for you to be. There's a target, you're an arrow, and you continue with your sin, you miss the mark of the target. But when we're saved, we now know who we were actually made to be, and now we hit the target because we shoot straight. So they're never going to, it's always going to be a battle with sin because they're never going to hit the target. They're always going to veer off left or right. They're always going to miss the target until they come to know Christ. That's treating the problem. Now, yes, stand up for the symptom. And I'm not saying not to. I'm saying do that, but don't stop there. There's more to it.
So how could a politician then, in that framework, how can a Christian who's a politician right now in Congress, Senate, state, local legislation, county boards, city boards, whatever, how can Christians stand up for that? Because I think of like I almost said Riley Leonard, but he was Notre Dame's quarterback in Colts. Riley Gaines from the conservative speaker, Kentucky swimmer, went up against she is now on one of the library boards for one of her towns, like her little area of Nashville, and liberals are going berserk over this. Sure. So how can a Christian? That's what I'm saying. It almost seems like even if we try to do a third way. And maybe this is using other people's response as an excuse. I don't know. But like, how do you, as someone who's in the political sphere, follow after Christ, but you still have a responsibility and a job to do?
Yeah. No, you got to do your job, right? And your job is to what in the political realm? What is your
represent
job?
Your people.
Okay. Are you representing your people? If you're representing your people, don't take it personally. Matter of fact, say, hey, I disagree with you. But let's go, hey, I'll take you out to lunch. Let's go talk about it.
And most politicians don't.
No, they slander each other. So-and-so's a big moron. They're an idiot. They said this. And that's watch.
The libtards?
Watch every time.
Those ones you mean?
Watch every time. Yeah, exactly. Watch every time the Democrats are on TV, they're always slandering the Republicans and they name names. Same with the Republicans to the Democrats. They name names. And it's like, in the political sphere, as a Christian, you have a job to do, and that's represent the people not your own ideas. You're not supposed to do that according to the American tradition. You're supposed to represent those who voted you in office.
Right. Yep. You're a Democratic Republic.
And you should know that. And so by that stance, you do that and don't be offended and reach across the aisle and say, listen, it's just like me, right? I can go out to lunch with one of my managers and we disagree on stuff all the time. I don't mistreat them. I don't have angst against them. We don't see eye to eye on work-related things, but they're still a person. They're still made in the image of God.
But how can you represent people who go against everything that you believe and stand for?
Well, this
is where it gets hard, man.
You were voted in by them, right? So you
weren't voted in by them because they voted against you. Like that's
so you got to have.
I'm just saying, I have a lot of very liberal friends, so I see all their faces.
Sure, but if you're in office, majority of one way of what you ran on, that platform you ran on, people said, yeah, I agree with the platform you ran on, and I want you to represent me. And it's all by majority, right? So it's like, hey, I'm in because majority says they want this. And unfortunately, it's not consensus, right? It's not everybody has to agree to it. It's majority
like
rules.
52%, 54%. Like
it's majority
close,
rules,
yeah.
but the majority of the people in that district, in that state, in that whatever.
Well, now they're trying to rezone the district so that way the Republicans get more seats in certain states and Democrats can get more seats. And that's why it just gets it's a mess.
Here's the thing:
it's a mess, bro.
That's going to happen, and then we're going to get a Democratic president one day, and it's going to swing the other way. It's just like with the. All this stuff about the freedom of speech, right? We talked about it a little bit earlier about, you can't say this or else you're going to lose your job or we're going to arrest you. And it's like, okay, just remember when there's one day that a Democratic president is going to get in and now they're going to use the same tactics in which you're using now, right? Because the pendulum is going to swing. Yep. The pendulum has never stayed to one side, never. And no matter how many times people want it or praying for it or begging God for it, it always swings the other way eventually. Now, is that going to be 2028? Maybe. I don't know. Is it going to be, is Vance going to get in and run 8 years? Who knows? I don't know what's going to happen. I don't claim to know what's going to happen, and I'm not flipping tarot cards if you listen to our Halloween episodes.
You're not gazing into the future of the mystical 8-ball?
Is it doesn't matter who's in office for me, right? And it doesn't matter who's in office, or it shouldn't matter who's in office for those who are in our representatives that claim to be Christians. There's still a command by Christ himself.
So are you okay then with pastors who say, like, okay, so I know a pastor who basically when it was right a little before voting time last time around, where it's the fact of, let's talk about the issues. Here's what the Bible says. And he flat out said, he goes, most pastors will not say this, but I will. He goes, right now, with how things are voting out with the two political candidates, there's only one party that handles these main issues that the Bible is explicitly clear. Because he's very much like how you handle taxes and how you handle immigration status and policies and tax code. Like the Bible has nothing to say about that.
The old rule of the lesser of two evils.
Right. And so he said from the pulpit, right now I only know one political party that's doing that, and it is this party.
Sure.
And he said, vote how you want, but also, this is what God says. And we had people leaving the church about it. But I'm like, and I appreciate him having just the guts to say that. But then there's other people where it's like, we shouldn't have politics from the pulpit, and we shouldn't say vote for Republicans or vote for Democrats from the pulpit.
So what would you say about the other way, where it's, like my liberal friend, if he went up and preached a message and being a Christian said, this is the main issues and why I think you should vote this way? But based on the same scriptures. Based on the Bible. Like, hey, there's these very clear scriptures that we should take care of the poor and the needy, and the other side isn't doing that. They're forsaking them and the elderly.
But then they would say they are doing that, just we're not turning them into modern-day slaves with.
But are handouts. They? I mean,
that's the balance.
It depends on where you're getting your news sources from. Right? Because if you're watching all CNN and left-wing stuff, you're going to get left-wing news.
If you're all Fox News,
you're going to get all right-wing. And it's always... But
it's entertainment.
But if you compare the two, you could have the same situation and both of them are reporting it differently. So which way is the truth?
Yep. And that's where I think it's hard, because I think a lot of Christians find themselves in this place where, like, there's this middle, I don't want to say this middle line, but like almost like there's the middle line, and some people are more on just a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. And I feel like that's where most of Christianity is the fact of, like, I don't like all of this, but... or I like all this, but it's hard, because I feel like now, and this is where I'm I will land my plane, is because it used to be the conservative side was way more right-leaning and the liberals were way more left. But now I feel like a lot of the Republicans are more moderate in general, that the line is starting to shift and blur and get different.
So I have a different viewpoint than you do on this.
Okay.
And my viewpoint is that the people who were once considered conservatives, the radical right now says, no, we're the conservatives and you're a liberal.
That's true. I mean, that's why Brett Cooper left Daily Wire. Yeah.
That's what's happening, is that the radicals, radical left, radical right, are taking over those parties, and then they're putting you in a different camp. And you're like, no, actually, I'm still conservative. I follow the scriptures. I follow the Bible, my convictions. I just don't go along with your Project 2025, or I don't go along with your aborting babies. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't do that. That's radical left, radical right. I don't do that, right? I stay and follow the scriptures of Christ. And they're like, well, you must be a liberal then, because you're not right in line in step with me. And it's like,
sorry you believe that, homie.
That's your opinion. I'm going to vote by my convictions.
And the beauty of America is you can have that opinion.
Absolutely.
And, oh gosh, what was I going to say to land the plane with that? But, I know what I was going to say. There's I haven't picked it up. I haven't listened to it yet, but J.D. Greear just kicked out a new book. And he was on his podcast of Ask a Pastor Anything. Used to be Ask Pastor J.D. Anything. They were talking about this exact issue. And he goes, you know what? I'm okay if you decide to put me into a camp based on what I say, but I'm not going to say I'm in a camp. And so, because he goes, I will be very clear where the scripture's clear. I will talk about our identity in Christ. I will talk about God's creative order. I will talk about the God made man in his image, male and female, he made them.
Sure.
About how marriage works, how the family dynamic is supposed to work. But at the same time, he goes, their church is huge on foster care and food pantries and partnering with local ministries to do things. I love how even Andy Stanley, they partner with, he has some other things too, of course, but he's like, we don't care if your organizations are Christian or not. If you're doing good work in the community, we're going to partner with you because you're doing good work, which I think is actually a really cool stance to take on that issue. But it's hard. I feel like this issue is hard because I feel like nowadays, because since the death of Charlie Kirk, people are more likely to say, I love Jesus and I love America too. In the fact of, of course, I'm not wearing it tonight, but like God, country, Notre Dame, like we're supposed to have these mindsets of Christians, and to be a good Christian is to be a good patriot, and to be a good patriot is to be a good Christian. I feel like a lot of people in the conservative Christian camp are starting to raise their flag. And I will say the temptation for me is great right now for that, where I'm kind of like, screw it. Like, y'all wanted to fight, let's go. Because that's my natural tendency of like, I'm fine until you put me in a corner.
And that's where you have to decide in your heart whether your patriotism is becoming an idol in your own life. And that's really where the rubber meets the road for a lot of people in this climate right now. Like you're saying, it's very volatile.
It's a very volatile climate,
political environment right now. And you have to say to yourself, look, am I going to say, screw it, I'm just going to go all out and just show these libtards or whatever, or show these MAGA guys how it is, whatever side of the fence you're on? Or are you going to still stay and say, listen, I'm going to still stand for the truth of Christ and present the gospel. And I'm going to be kingdom-minded in the political realm, not kingdom-minded outside, secluded, but also not idolizing the patriotism only. And then the Christianity side thing, the kingdom-making side of it, be second best.
Time for Fun Facts with Filler.
Well, bro, we went long on that one with no nose, brother.
We could go a lot longer.
We really, I'm like, dude, we could just gear up for another hour if we really wanted to. Well, but we have to go to bed.
It's funny because you were like, yeah, this is going to be a 3-hour episode. And I'm like, it probably could be.
It could be. Definitely. But that's it, man. So we want to keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
But I will say, inside of the Facebook group, make sure if we do have these conversations, we do show Christian gratitude. We show grace,
love, grace,
and humility. Or if not, I will delete the post.
And if you keep doing it,
I can mute you.
I was gonna say, if you keep doing it, then we'll just you'll be blocked for 30 days, and if you continue to do it after that, we'll just remove you all the way.
We doing a little smack on the hand, putting you in.
And it's
Facebook
nothing against you, but there are the rules that you agreed to follow, and that was in there.
Absolutely, bro. Well, hey, dude, we need a little lightheartedness, man. But I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. But before we go, Fuller, we got to hit them with another fun fact. What you got to end today's show?
So the fun fact of the day is, did you know there's an ant species unique to New York City alone?
I did not.
They're called Manhattan ants. And biologists found them in a specific 14-block strip of the city.
What?
Manhattan ants. So like
What?
Manhattan. Yeah, man. Isn't that kind of cool?
I would love to know, did they like mutate because of all the
Radioactive Spider-Man
That's
kind of
what
thing?
I was thinking. I'm like, did they mutate because of the amount of like,
Maybe.
what's the word I'm looking for?
Pollution.
Pollution that's over there and
Maybe.
whatnot. I don't know, dude.
Maybe they had to change in order to survive the climate.
That's
of
what.
all city cement and
But that's fascinating. So the biologists found them in a specific strip.
just in 14 blocks.
That's nuts.
I'm wondering if somebody went somewhere overseas and came back and like had an ant in their luggage or something like that, and then that ant found an ant and they crossbreeded it or whatever.
I mean, that's what happened with those murder bees. Like those
Right.
murder bees came in and then like
Right.
cross-pollinated, or the fish that come from like overseas into like they're dealing with that like in Lake Michigan and some of the
Yeah.
Great Lakes with like,
Well, it's like even-
fish
even
infestation.
Even stink bugs were not naturally in our area. They're actually an infestation of it.
No, they're not. What?
Yes, they were actually. I think it was Japan. I think I read. I was looking it up the
Well,
other day.
y'all can take them back.
Absolutely.
Y'all can take them back.
same
And take
with,
them fruit flies too. Those fruit flies are killing me this season.
Oh, they're terrible.
Terrible.
But anyways, you know what else is terrible?
What's terrible,
The
my
fact
friend?
that they have the people that have not joined the Facebook community page
That's
are
sad.
still sitting here listening and not logging in to join the Facebook community page.
Don't be dumb. Join the Facebook page.
You can do two things at the same time. It's pretty
Ooh.
easy to listen and to join the Facebook community
Yeah,
page.
so if you're on the pooper right now, you can go to the Facebook page and follow along.
That's Mark's favorite place to post.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that, but now I do.
No, my favorite place is posted on my computer because I can type faster. I don't like
there you
texting
go.
from my phone.
Yeah.
But either way, guys, we are so thankful that you joined us for another episode of RCC. Come back next week where we have a very, very special Christmas episode in store for you guys.
Yes,
so
we do.
We love you guys, and until then,
Take it easy.